Well, Brad, I'm down here in the sunny state of Florida, down in Miami Gardens, Florida, at Hard Rock Stadium. If you look right behind me, got the Orange Bowl trophy, Hard Rock Stadium, looking beautiful as always. In the Capital One Orange Bowl, what's in your wallet? Where the number 7 Notre Dame Fighting Irish take on the number 6 Penn State Nittany Lions. Thursday night kickoff this week at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. Notre Dame currently favored in this one by 2 points, and this is going to be one heck of a matchup, Brad. I think, heading into last week, obviously you and Rooster missed the episode. Rooster's still recovering from foot surgery. You were under the weather as well, so best of luck to Rooster moving forward, and glad to have you back, Brad, for another episode. But, yeah, when I broke down this game last week between, both Penn State game and the Notre Dame game, I picked Georgia versus Notre Dame. I picked Penn State to beat Boise State, and I believe you and Rooster both picked Boise State for a good reason. But heading into this game, let's talk about a few key points. Obviously, you got Penn State and Nittany Lions coming into this game 13-2 in their first ever playoff run, their first ever semifinal playoff appearance too. And then you look at the Notre Dame Fighting Irish 13-1 on a very similar run, gaining some momentum later on in the season. And one thing I want to say real quick too, Brad, is, when we look back at the previous playoff games in the first quarterfinal rounds where, each of the winning teams had a bye week and had some time off, every single one of those teams lost. And so, you have to wonder, does that play a part into it going forward in the next season? That's another question for another day. But these two teams, they had some momentum going into the quarterfinals, and now they have some momentum going into the semifinals. So let's start off with one of the big names of this game for Penn State. That's quarterback Drew Allar. Obviously, he's been instrumental this year. He's had some terrific throws, Brad, in some of the playoff games. I watched him very closely this year. I've really seen him step up both in passing and rushing abilities. Just give me your take on this guy and what he brings to this Penn State offense coming into this game.
Absolutely, Nate. Really good question. Drew Allar, I think, has been a big beneficiary of the change in systems this year. Andy Koltnecki comes over from Kansas, completely changes this offense around. They are very, very fun. They go with a lot of really odd, kind of funky formations. But Drew Allar just looks more comfortable to me. I think the game has really slowed down. And Nate, we're talking about a guy that was a 5-star. He was, one of the top, 2 or 3 quarterbacks coming out of his class. And there was a lot of expectations on him. I thought last year there was some good, but there was a lot of bad. And I think he's really, really played well this year. And I will say, I think he made a really, really wise decision to come back because, I've seen, that he's got a day 2 grade as far as the NFL draft. And, I don't know what it looks like. If he continues to progress and gets them, to the national championship, I don't know what his grade looks like next year. But I think if he continues to show, some growth, he's probably going to play his way into the first round. I do think there may be a little bit of limitation there just with his legs. But I will say in defense of, what I just said, I do think he has shown an ability to throw the football, but he's got a strong arm. I still think he's working, just on, accuracy, and I think he's just going to continue to get better, but he's got a full command of this offense. But I will say that he's got some good weapons around him, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but I'm impressed with the weapons. But once again, Andy Koltnecki, that was a very, very A++ hire that James Franklin made. That's changed this Penn State team around, in my opinion.
Yeah, Brad, and I think it's allowed James Franklin to focus a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball, which has stepped up. We'll talk about them in a minute. But, yeah, as far as Drew Allar goes, I mean, he's played terrific this year, over 3,000 yards passing, 24 touchdowns. Struggled a little bit in the interception game, 7 interceptions, but still has a QBR of 78.1, which ranks 15th in all of college football. You got to like what you see from this guy if you're a Penn State fan. And he's only a junior. I mean, even if his grade does go up to a late first rounder, he still has the option to come back and play another year and pick up some more NIL money Not saying he will. I don't want to.
Well, and he has announced that he's coming back for a senior season.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So there you go. So he's already announced it. And, things can change.
Yeah.
If he does win the national championship, maybe that changes his decision, especially if he jumps up in the first round. But, to your point, with him already saying that he's coming back, I mean, you gotta like what you have and Drew Allar. Now, I know everyone was really excited to see Carson Beck come back this year for Georgia, and obviously it didn't play out the way we thought it would as Georgia fans. But yeah, as a Penn State guy, Penn State fan, you gotta like what you see from them. And shout out to my parents' neighbor, big Penn State fan, and he's excited to see his team roll into the semifinals. So good for them. But moving on to our next guy for Penn State, and it's kind of a double whammy here. You got the running back duo of and I'm drawing a blank on the names, but Katron Allen and I'm drawing a blank.
Nick Singleton.
Nick Singleton, thank you. So you got Allen and Singleton, both dynamic backs, and I think that has played a part in Drew Allar's success as well. Having that duo at the running back position, it's really helped Drew Allar gain some confidence in the play action and in the run block and everything so forth. So, Brad, thoughts on these two guys in the backfield and what kind of element do they bring against this strong Notre Dame defensive front?
Absolutely, Nate. The thing that really stands out to me about these guys is, and I've watched, I've obviously watched Penn State more in the postseason than I did in the regular season, but I watched them in the Oregon game, and they really impressed me. But the Boise State, SMU and Boise State game, they really impressed me. These guys don't necessarily go, one possession is Allen, one possession Singleton. But the thing that stands out to me when you have this type of 1-2 punches, these guys both have a chance to be fresh and, in a good position going into the fourth quarter. And, that is, when you have that ability to, to just interswap guys out, possession to possession, or, maybe on a drive, 2 carries, that is beneficial, when you get into, we're into game, 15 for these two teams.
Yeah.
We're 2 games away from the national championship. That is very, very beneficial. It also, just the way these two guys, both of these guys are 220 plus. I would say Singleton's a little bit more of the balance guy as far as, having the ability to catch passes, but Katron Allen's also an absolute load. So these two, and Nate, something else, mentioned Allar's come back. These two guys are both juniors. So, and I've not heard one way or another, but we're talking about Penn State, bringing back an entire backfield. Nittany Lions are set up in a good position here.
Yeah, and Brad, you mentioned, you can look at the stats, right? Allen averaging 5.1 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards rushing on 201 carries. And when you look at Nicholas Singleton, he's averaging 6.5 yards per carry, over 1,000 yards and just under 200 carries at 157. And then you look at their team stats, right? You look at their rushing yards per game. Penn State ranks 16th in the nation. They're averaging 202 yards per game rushing. So when you have that kind of attack and you're able to set the tone, leading the way with your two bell cows, so to speak, it sets up for a pretty good game plan on the offensive side. So I think Penn State's in good shape offensively. We didn't even talk about, which we are going to talk about now, and that's the receiving game. And look no further than tight end Tyler Warren, of the Penn State Nittany Lions, just a reliable target. Third down guy, kind of reminds me of a Jason Witten type for Tony Romo, just old reliable, as I like to call him. Very similar to, not necessarily playing style, but just in his offensive impact, like a Brock Bowers, Kelsey, Travis Kelsey, like a Kittle kind of guy. He's just old reliable, and he's there for Drew Allar whenever Drew Allar needs him as the play breaks down. What have you seen from Tyler Warren, and what kind of skill set does he bring to this game?
Absolutely, Nate. Once again, going back to Andy Koltnecki here, he realized that he had, kind of a unicorn athlete here with Tyler Warren. You've seen him at Wildcat quarterback. You've seen him line up, in the pistol, some in the backfield. they'll put him under center to give an indication of what the defense is going to do and then split him out. They're very, very creative with what they do with him. Nate, it also stands out to me. I mean, talked about he's thrown a touchdown this year. He's thrown the ball 6 times, so they've used him in that aspect. He's got a long rushing of a 48-yard rush, but he's an 1,100-yard receiver. He's got almost 100 catches on the year as a tight end. So this guy's a unicorn, man. He's fun to watch. Nate, one point I do want to make, I think with Penn State having the couple of extra days rest on Notre Dame, and the fact, and not to jump ahead, we're going to talk about, Notre Dame has got an extremely good defense. I think we're going to see even some more wrinkles, specifically with Tyler Ward on Thursday night. Andy Koltnecki is going to be creative with him. I'm expecting at least, a handful of creative packages and creative plays with him.
Yeah, Brad, and we talked about the rushing attack just a second ago. I think Tyler Ward offers the blocking. He offers the receiving. You talk about the Wildcat package. He's a do-it-all kind of guy. He's going to be a big pickup in this year's NFL draft. When you look at Penn State's passing offense, they rank 53rd, but you got to remember they're still averaging 234 yards passing per game, opposed to last year where they were only throwing 177 yards per game. That's a big difference, Brad. Mm-hmm. When you combine the two, rushing and passing, you're looking over 400 yards of offense per game. That's insane. Mm-hmm. That's really hard to stop. And so heading into this game, I think Tyler Warren offers that. And you mentioned his receiving yards. I mean, he's averaging 11.8 yards per catch. I mean, that's, as a tight end, you can't ask for much better than that. So I think that's a good transition into the next team that Penn State will be facing off against, and that's Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Let's start off with their leader at quarterback, Riley Leonard, transfer from Duke. And, man, he stepped right into this role and proven himself time and time again. We were big on him at Duke. Didn't really know what he was going to produce for Notre Dame. But, man, he's been a plug-and-play kind of guy stepping in. And I'm drawing a blank on the Wake Forest transfer from last year.
Sam Hartman.
Sam Hartman, yeah. He put up some great numbers for Notre Dame. And Riley Leonard has just taken the baton and leapt a little bit further. So thoughts on this guy and his pivotal role coming into this semifinal game, Brad?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of him. Just a really, I watched the interview with him, right after Notre Dame defeated Georgia. Just a humble guy, a hardworking guy. Notre Dame, I think his teammates and that coach staff, they really, really like him. Nate, I was curious to see, because Riley Leonard was really, really good at Duke. He battled some injuries, but he has a few more weapons than he did at Notre Dame. He's got, a better offensive line. This is a guy, he's never going to throw for 400 yards in a game. And we saw that in the semifinal game. He threw, I believe it was, about 86 passing yards or, something like that. He's not that, but he has command of the offense. They know what they want to do. And Nate, this is a run-first offense. We know that. But, look, Riley Leonard made a few runs in that game that makes you say, okay, you've got to account for him. You've got to, you can't – when they do throw it, you can't get too far upfield. You've got to rush him in a smart way. So he's not a guy, once again, not a guy that's going to just kill you with his arm. He can beat you with his legs, but he's got full command of that offense. This team looks to him, and he's had a good year for Notre Dame. This is exactly the reason he transferred to Notre Dame, is to be in this position.
Yeah, Brad. And, to piggyback off what you were saying, I watched this Notre Dame team play Georgia, and I watched Riley Leonard play all year. I said it in the last preview video when I was on this past week talking about Georgia Notre Dame. They're not the type of offense that's going to make your jaw drop and make you go, whoa, what was that? That's crazy, right? They don't have that guy that has that top 10, 100-yard speed like some of these other teams do. But what they do make you do is they force you to make mistakes because they play such good fundamental football. I almost compare – I talked to Rooster off there earlier a couple of days ago. I kind of made a similar analogy to Pop Warner fundamental football. Like, they really don't do anything special. They're just physical at the point of attack, and they make you make mistakes. And that's what Riley Leonard has done. he's obviously a smart guy studying at Duke and now at Notre Dame. Those are two very high prestige academic schools. So, the guy brings football smarts as well to the game. And he's a hard-nosed runner. Look, when he runs the ball, he's kind of like Scattaboo a little bit. He'll put his head down and force you to make contact. And I like guys like that. Those are real football guys. And you mentioned his stats, 2,300 yards plus on the air and 18 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He's played pretty good football. And got to give a lot of credit to Marcus Freeman and what he's been able to do with that Notre Dame football team. Heading into the season, there were some speculations of, is he the guy? Is he the guy for Notre Dame? He's a young coach, inexperienced, a lot of riff-raff going on back and forth. Let me tell you what, he's proven himself this year. He's got his team farther than Brian Kelly has had Notre Dame in a long time. So got to give props to Marcus Freeman where credit is due. And, I'm going to be able to watch this team play in the Orange Bowl on Thursday night. I'll be there with one of our biggest Break the Huddle supporters / fans, Randall. Shout out Randall, huge supporter of the show. Love him to death and excited to go watch some great football on Thursday night. But before we get into our predictions, let's finish off with Notre Dame. Let's talk about the running game, Brad. We talk about a dynamic duo for Penn State. Now let's talk about a dynamic duo for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Obviously, you got Jeremiah Love and you got Jadarian Price. These are two phenomenal backs in their own right, and two young guys at that too. Jeremiah Love only being a sophomore. Tell me about this rushing attack, Brad, and what it brings to Notre Dame's offense and the kind of headaches it brings to Penn State's defensive coordinator.
Absolutely, Nate. And look, Notre Dame is a rush-first offense. We know that. Opposite of Penn State has, that elite go-to target in Tyler Warren. I don't think Notre Dame necessarily has that. Bo Collins, the Clemson transfer, he's really solid. Jaden Greathouse is a sophomore. I'm a fan of his. He's from Austin, Texas. Mitchell Evans is a good tight end in his own right, but I wouldn't say that Notre Dame just has that, one go-to guy. And you see that. I mean, Bo Collins, their leading receiver, Nate, 37 catches on the year, 458 yards. Not anything that just blows you away, but you mentioned their running game. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, the sophomore, is very, very talented. You throw in Riley Leonard, who has, he has 830 rushing yards himself and 15 touchdowns. So, Nate, one other point that I want to make about this, we talked about, James Franklin going out and getting a new offensive coordinator. Marcus Freeman was tasked with the same. Jared Parker leaves to be the head coach at Troy. And so, there was a lot of thoughts, with who Marcus Freeman was going to hire, and he goes out and gets LSU's offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock. He coached with him while they were both at Cincinnati. I thought this was an A+ hire. Denbrock coached Jaden Daniels, and it's a much different offense. Of course, a lot of that was let's let Jaden Daniels be Jaden Daniels, but it's a physical team. They've got a good offensive line, and once again, similar to Penn State, they can switch out Love. They can put Price in there. They're going to give Riley Leonard some quarterback zone, some quarterback power. Would watch for true freshman Anais Williams. He's completely different than the other two. He's a little bit more of a scat back, a little bit more of a receiving back. But look, Penn State's got their hands full. And Nate, I know we're going to get into prediction, but I want to make out one quick point. Star defensive end for Penn State, Abdul Carter. Double-digit sacks on the year. He's questionable. That's a very, very big deal. We don't know his status for Thursday. And look, I think if you ask James Franklin behind closed doors, would he rather have Abdul Carter for this game or a potential national championship game? I think we all know the answer. But look, that's a big injury. I mean, that is a guy that, as a defensive end, you truly, I won't say you spy him, but Abdul Carter has got the power and the speed to, they can change up his role and use him to affect Riley Leonard. That's a big injury that if he doesn't go, that has a big effect on this game.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's a game changer. I mean, you look at guys like in the past for Georgia, and I'm drawing a blank, Jalen Carter and guys like that. I mean, those are difference makers, and they say like football is a team sport. It is. But those type of guys help the team, right? And so If they're missing him in this game, and obviously he's day to day questionable, we don't know the status yet. Maybe we'll know towards the end of this week, and as we get further information, we'll update you accordingly via Instagram and Twitter. Be sure to follow us at @breakthehuddle_. But that's a big game changer. But looking at this rushing attack, Brad, for Notre Dame, this has been the biggest stat that has shocked me. And we talked about fundamental football and not having an explosive attack outside. But let's look at their run game. They rank second in the nation for yards per rushing attempt. They're averaging 6.1 yards per carry. I mean, that's crazy, Brad. And that includes whether it's the quarterback or both of these running backs. 6.1 yards per carry, ranked second in the nation. And you can talk about all these other teams around them, like we talk about Boise State, right? They're averaging 5.8 yards per carry with Genty and what they were able to do this year. But man, Notre Dame, man, they look fantastic in the rushing attack. Now let's talk about their passing attack. You kind of mentioned on Bo Collins, leading receiver for Notre Dame. And look, Penn State has a very aggressive defense. They're very good at stopping the run. They're going to force Riley Leonard to throw it in this game. We thought Georgia was going to be capable of doing that. They couldn't. They at the end of the day, they held up their own for a minute. But in the end, Notre Dame kind of broke that water dam, so to speak, and it went flowing. So is Riley Leonard's passing game going to have to play a role in this game with Bo Collins? What are your thoughts on Bo Collins and this receiving core for Notre Dame?
I think Notre Dame is going to – I think they're going to have opportunities to run the football. And like I said, I think Riley Leonard is going to have to be a big part of that because when you do run quarterback power, in quarterback zone, it frees your running back to be a lead blocker and to be an extra blocker. But this is a really, really good Notre Dame front four. It's a good front seven. I'm impressed with Tony Rojas. Penn State's very, very talented. Linebacker, Danny Dennis Sutton, the defensive end opposite of Abdul Carter, is very, very good. Ultimately, though, Nate, and like I said, we're going to get to prediction in a second. Riley Leonard's going to have to make some play with his arms, and I really like this Penn State second. This Penn State secondary is good. I mean, going back, not to jump too far, but I was impressed. Penn State played Ohio State very, very tough, and Ohio State's got some freaks at receiver, and Penn State played them tough. So, is Riley Leonard's arm in this receiving core enough to get it done? I don't think so, but we're going to find out Thursday night. It's going to be an interesting tale. Like I said, I think Notre Dame has some success. Do they have 4 quarters of success? I don't think they do, ultimately.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing. And when you look at Notre Dame's passing attack, they haven't been great this year. They rank 100, and I just lost it. There it is, 105th in the nation in passing. They're only throwing for about 189 yards per game. Now, this is much more than they were last year and the year before. Last year, they were only throwing the ball for about 156 yards per game. The year before that, only 90 yards per game. So they've definitely leveled up in their passing attack, but still not even in the top 100 ranked for passing attack. And you got to think that's going to come into play. Now, jumping ship to let's just quickly sum up what we're going to see from the defensive side for both of these teams, Brad. Let's start off with Notre Dame. Defensively, we saw what they were able to do against Georgia, and obviously Georgia had a young quarterback in Gunnar Stockton. Going to be a little bit different going up against a guy like Drew Allar. What is it going to take for this Notre Dame defense to stop this Penn State offense?
For me, plain and simple, I do. One thing that impressed me about Notre Dame was they really, they're undersized up front, but they were able to shut down Georgia's running game. That really impressed me. I personally think that Penn State's got a little bit better offensive line, a little bit better running game than Georgia does. So that's going to be important. For Notre Dame, though, you've got to affect Tyler Warren. Notre Dame has got, one of the best safeties in the country in Xavier Watts. That's going to be very, very important. But Nate, they've got to create turnovers. I was looking at a stat, Notre Dame, in all their wins, they forced at least one turnover. Their one game they lost against Northern Illinois, I can't remember if they didn't force any or they went even, but Notre Dame has got to force turnovers. And I will say Penn State does, they do a pretty good job of hanging on to the football. But the number one thing is they've got to shut down Tyler Warren. Do they have the capability to do that? I don't know. Jack Kaiser is a very, very talented linebacker. He's been there, it seems like 15 years. He's a good linebacker. It mentioned Xavier Watts. I will make a point, and not to, Penn State has got, some good receivers, but Notre Dame has been without their best cornerback, Benjamin Morrison, I believe, since October, and they've done fine getting by there. But, this is a different animal, so that's a factor for sure.
Yeah, Brad, I want to bring up this key stat that I find so interesting as well. Penn State ranks 28th in opponent plays per game. They're only allowing 64.9 plays per game from their opponent. And then you look at Notre Dame, not too far behind, ranked 53rd at 67 plays per game. So these two teams, they hold their own. And then you look at their opponent total yards per game, right? Penn State ranks 5th. They're only allowing 288 yards per game from their opponents. And then you look at Notre Dame, if I can find it real quick, they are ranked 6th, only giving up 295 yards per game. So, I mean, it's neck and neck with these two defenses. And going over to Penn State real quick, because I kind of jumped the gun there. Apologies, Brad, but I kind of gave my take on it. What's your take on this Penn State defense? This is a very underrated defense. This is a Big Ten defense, very physical. Everyone wants to talk about Ohio State and the run they're on. Well, Penn State's on their own run. They have really stepped up in recent games, and they're rolling. What are your thoughts on this defense?
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm just, I'm going to make this pretty quick because I have mentioned, obviously Abdul Carter, we're going to see about that. But Danny Dennis Sutton is another defensive end that really impressed me. Tony Rojas, he's a true sophomore. I really, really like his game. He made a couple plays against SMU. Nate, I think the thing that stands out to me is, the two games that I've primarily watched Penn State a lot. I watched them against Boise State, but that was Ohio State and Oregon. What do those two teams have? They have elite receivers and Oregon burnt them with their speed. Ohio State obviously has just got Ohio State's got an NFL receiving core. We're going to talk more about that later on, but I think Penn State is to me, they're going to be focused on forcing Riley Leonard and these receivers to beat them. I think Notre Dame's going to have a little bit of success, but I don't think they're going to have enough sustained success on the ground for 4 quarters. That ultimately, to me, is what this comes down to.
So with that being said, Brad, let's take a look at the series history between Penn State and Notre Dame. They faced off 19 times. They're tied at 9-9-1. The most recent meeting being in 2007, where Penn State secured a 31-10 victory. This Orange Bowl matchup not only breaks the series tie, but also offers a chance for either of these teams to make the national championship in the next coming weeks. The spread on this game, I believe, is 2 by Notre Dame. Some have it at 1.5 Notre Dame. The over-under 46.5, so a very low scoring. Who can control the clock, the ground game, to your point. Who do you have winning the Capital One Orange Bowl, Brad?
Nate, I'm going to keep this short and sweet and then turn it over to you. I'm taking the Penn State Nittany Lions, and it just ultimately comes down to me. I think Penn State's got a little bit more explosiveness on offense. I think your point, I think Notre Dame's going to try to control this game. I personally think, and I'm interested to see if this plays out, if I'm James Franklin and Andy Koltnecki, I'm looking to be super aggressive, the first 20 minutes of this game, see if I can get up by double digits. This is not a Notre Dame offense built to come back in games. If Penn State keeps, if they don't turn the ball over, if they can, make some plays with Drew Allar, with Tyler Warren, and then lean on this ground game in the second half, I think the Nittany Lions come out on top, and that's who I'm taking.
Brad, one thing that I'm looking for in this matchup is I'm looking to see, does Penn State run a hurry-up offense? We know that Penn State's missing one of their key defenders, but we know that Notre Dame is missing a few, both on the defensive front. They had a guy go down late against Georgia. We don't know the status of him. So I look for Penn State to run this ball early. And we saw the quick start they had against Boise State. They got out real quick, and Boise State just wasn't able to catch up. I look for Penn State to do the same here. I went with Penn State last week. I'm rolling with Penn State again in this upset. This is going to be a close matchup. It's going to be a heavyweighter contender matchup. This is like a Vander Holyfield, Mike Tyson. These two teams are going to be throwing punches left and right. They're going to get knocked down. The question is which team gets up quicker and punches back. I think Penn State's able to do it, and I think they outweigh Notre Dame in the passing game. I think both have very physical run games, but I think Penn State's going to be able to slow down Notre Dame's rush attack, and I think they run away with this one in the fourth. I think Penn State wins by 7 points in the fourth. Give me Penn State. Let us know down in the comments who you think is going to come out on top in this year's Capital One Orange Bowl, and the semifinals played in Miami, Florida. I'll be there, so if you see me, love to take a picture with you. If not, well, maybe another time. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know down in the comments again who's going to come out on top. We'll see you next week. It's time to break the huddle.